So AWS is a simple storage service, and it is provided by the AWS cloud platform. And this particular AWS S3 organizations in real time, they will use as a storage. If they want to store their data, they'll use as a storage service. So for storing the data into this particular S3, you are going to pay to the AWS. So if you want more details about this S3, I'll share the link also. You can just go through it. But nobody is going to ask or deep dive into about S3. Very rare conditions they will deep dive. But if somebody is kind of deep diving to this particular AWS S3, you can tell them like we have just using as an external stage for our project purpose. So we don't have any activity or we don't have any exposure on this particular AWS S3. Everything will be taken care by source team or admin people. That's what you can mention. But you shouldn't say them like I don't know what about that S3. You should say you know about that S3, how it looks like, how we can create S3 bucket, how we can place the file into AWS S3. This is how we'll do. Okay, is it clear? Any doubts?
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yes.
now my source file or feed file is placed into that AWS S3. So now my job here done. So the next step, what it is. So now if you take a Snowflake, so if you want to access some particular data from that particular database, what we are doing, we are creating a role and we are granting that particular role to the user, right? That is what we have seen in the Snowflake. Then only the user will be able to access that, right? Otherwise they cannot access it. See, for example, I have as account admin, I have created a particular table. So is it the sysadmin is going to be able to access that particular table? No, right? Until you grant that access to that particular user, particular role, you cannot access it. So similarly, I have placed my file into that S3. Now I need to grant the permission, right? Otherwise nobody can access this particular file. So they're maintaining a security features, right? So how you can safeguard your data then? So now I just placed my file into my S3 bucket. So now basically I'm going to give permissions to particular role, and by using that particular role I can access this particular data from this particular S3 bucket. So in Snowflake, it's recording, right? Okay, good. Okay, so now if you go here, see these are the tables I have created with the account admin. For suppose if now I'm changing the role account admin to kind of a developer, I'll be able to access all the tables. I can only see what are the tables owned by this particular developer, right? If I want to grant that other tables to this developer, then as account admin, I need to grant a privileges to this particular developer, then I can able to access the data. So this is a common, right? So same here also, now the data is available in S3. Now basically we need to provide the privileges to the particular role, and by using that particular role I can able to access this data from AWS S3 from Snowflake side. So how we are going to do that now, we'll see. So now in in Snowflake documentation itself, they have given very detailed level steps with along with the screenshots. You will can easily understand it. I'll share this. So keep it as a reference. You can just follow the steps. So in this particular thing, only the steps, whatever we have done so far, those steps won't be available. How to create the free trial account, how to create the S3 bucket, how we can place the file from that into the S3 bucket, they won't give. But post that, what are the permissions we need to give, how we can give the permissions, everything they have given detail level. See now here, this is a kind of a get bucket location, get object version, list bucket. So these permissions we need, right? So list bucket in the sense, whenever you're doing a list of the stage, right, you need to see how many files are there in that bucket, how many files are there in that particular bucket, what is the file path, all these details. If I want to access it, basically I need to provide these permissions with respect to that S3 bucket. How I am going to provide that permissions, we'll see here. So what I need to do, create a IAM policy, create a IAM policy. So as part of this policy, I am going to grant the privileges about this particular S3 bucket. So now I'm moving to the main console. So now S3 part is done. So the next service is I'm going to use IAM, Identity Access Management. I'm going to use this particular service. So why I need this particular service? So now I have placed the file in S3 bucket. Now I want to grant the privileges to the user. So in order to that, how I can grant the privileges? By using the IAM. So this is a kind of a identity access management service. This will deal with the access related stuff in the AWS console. So now here you can click on the policies. You can click on the policies. So now if you see here,
in the previous tab,
yep,
services recommendations in highlighted in red one.
yes,
What was that?
where?
Previous slide. Previous slide, not previous. Go to the previous. Yes, this one, security recommendations.
See, whenever you're
Highlighted in
using
one.
any particular service, they will show always like what are the security standards you can maintain, what are the features you can enable it. So this is a trial account, right? So they'll keep on send alert notifications, they keep on send and asking to implement all the features, and end of the day they will charge you. That is what their intention. They're asking to add MFA to root user. See, now I'm using email ID and password to login, right? So they're
Yes.
asking you to enable the multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor authentication, it is something is like, so when we are logging in Gmail, it will ask a two-step process, right?
Yes.
After giving your
Get the control.
credentials, it will send a pin to you. Then after entering that pin only, you will be able to log in. Similarly, once you enable this particular thing, so they will send one notification to your device. Once you accept that thing, then only it will allow to log in as a kind of a
Okay.
security.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Mm.
So now, yeah, tell me. So now I'm going to create the policy here. So this is my account ID. All the details, my account URL and everything will show here. So now I'm going to create a policy to grant the S3 bucket related privileges. So now here I can create a policy. If you which service you want, you can choose that particular service, and you can put what all action you want to have it here, and you can finally you can create that. But I'm not going to do that. I can just simply create a policy and I can add the privileges later point in time. So now go to the policy, create policy, just move on next, click on the next. Okay, let me select S3 here. Next. Oh, okay. So let me do one thing. So now just click on the policies, create a policy. So if you want to go kind of a granting all the privileges, everything, it will go step by step here. So instead of this, if you look at here, so they are saying just a create policy and click on the JSON tab. So whatever I'm walking through that visually here, instead of visual, so here basically I need to select each and everything manually. So instead of that, I can go with the JSON format. So here I can grant the whatever I want through this visual. I can just directly I can give it here. So now if you see your documentation, so they have provided the particular JSON template. So basically what I'm doing here, allow auto actions put object, which means place the file into your S3 bucket and get the object, access that particular file from that your S3 bucket, delete object, delete that particular file from your S3 bucket, delete object version, and by using a particular AWS role. So basically I'm going to grant these privileges to this particular role. So I didn't provide that role name. I'll provide that particular role after creating that role. So now I'm just creating this particular policy. So now I can just copy this and I can paste it. So later I can change this particular role and this particular bucket. So S3 bucket I have already created. So I can replace these details later. I'm just as of now go ahead and I'm creating the policy. So instead of visual, I can go with the JSON so that like all the whatever the details I want, I'm just directly giving as part of the JSON format. I'm specifying the permissions. Please see here. So what I'm doing, what is mean by this particular policy? Basically, I'm going to provide the necessary privileges to access that particular S3 bucket. Is it clear or anybody has any confusion here? Simple. I'm just going to the policies. I'm repeating once again. Just click on the policy, click on the create policy, go to the JSON and your Snowflake documentation. Already they have given what are the permissions we needed. Copy it, paste it. Control Alt, Control V. That's all. But what is mean by this particular JSON? So this is the version they have created and this is the statement I want and which role I'll specify here that role name and also I'll specify my S3 bucket name also. I'll do that later. So as of now, I'm just going ahead and I'm creating a policy. Next, and you can give the policy name. Policy name I have given. See if you see here, S3 service by default, it is selecting read list write this access level I'm granting and this is the particular role. I'll modify that particular role after creating the role here itself. So now create policy, right? So now the next step we need to create a role. So policy creation is done. Is it clear? Anybody has any queries so far about
No, sir.
S3 bucket creation and then policy creation?
Yes, understand.
Okay, so now policy creation is done. So the next step is I need to create a role. Basically this whatever the privileges I have given to this particular policy, I'm going to assign that particular policy to this particular role. So based by using this particular role, I am going to access the S3 bucket. Okay, so now I'm going to create a role here itself. Same identity and access management only. Now I have created already policies. So I have created two policies. I think I have for the other session I have created another policy. Now just now we have created policy, right? This is load CSV. I think another policy also have. It's okay. So now role. So this is the policy, whatever the policy I have created. So now basically what I'm going to do now, create role. So now you can select here. Here you need to select the AWS account, not service. If service means if you are going with the compute part. So please careful while selecting these options. If you are not sure, just refer it to this particular recording session once, twice, then only select this. Otherwise, by mistakenly if you select something, they will charge you because those will not comes under your free trial. So okay, now AWS account, and this is the account. Next, add permissions. So which permission you want to add it here? So S3, you have created, right? This is the policy. I'm going to add this particular services policies, and I'm moving to the next and put role. Role name. Then here we need to put the trusted entities. So this part I'll come. I have added already my permissions. So now if you see here again, so this screenshot is a little bit old one. So new AWS console they have changed it after selecting that AAM AWS account. They have given very detailed level step by step here. You don't need to worry about thing. Everything they have given. So now finally you can create the role. So now I'm going here and I'm going to create that particular. See, now my role is available here. If I open this particular role which was created earlier, and I can see this is my permission added, CSV load S3. So I need to copy this particular ARN. So once you created the role, it will create a ARN. This is the role name. You need to copy this particular ARN. Is it clear till here?
Yes, sir.
Any doubts? Okay, so I'm just reconsolidating or recapping again quickly. So first I have created my S3. So I'm taking this particular my S3 bucket name. So I can copy this my particular S3 bucket name. Okay, so now S3 bucket is done. Now second step what I did, I need to create a policy. I have already created the policy. So I'm going to that IAM and I'm taking the policy. So this is my policy name. Okay, then I have created my policy. I have provided this particular privileges to this particular policy. So in this particular policy, we have already added the JSON, which was provided by here. Okay, but in this particular policy, we need to change two things. One is that particular role ARN, other one is bucket name. So now policy is created, and third step is I have created the role also. So in this particular role, I have created S3 load Snowflake. So this is my particular role. Okay, so now after creating this particular role, I need this particular ARN. I have copied the ARN from here. Once the role is successfully created, it will show ARN template. So this is important one. So I just copied this ARN. I just copied this particular ARN. So now I know about my S3 bucket name, and then I know about my policy name, and I know about my role ARN. So this is particularly role ID. So if you see here, this is the role S3 load Snowflake policy I have assigned to this particular role. Okay, so now I am going to use this particular ARN as part of my S3 JSON. So now I'm going back. So what is my policy name? CSV load S3. I'm going back here, open this particular one, and I'm going to the JSON, and I'm going to put this particular bucket name. So this is my ingestion bucket, right? This is the bucket what I have created here. So now if you see here, we need to put only bucket name. That's all, nothing else. So now I have added that one. Now everything is done from my AWS end. For the policy creation, bucket creation is done. Policy creation, bucket creation, rule creation also is done from AWS console side. Any doubts, please let me know. This is important one. If you understand this, your job is done.
Yes,
Please
sir. Understand 3 point.
let me know if anybody has any queries here. Okay, so now I'm going to the Snowflake web UI now. We have next action item from the Snowflake web UI. Okay, so now I'm going to share all these details. So far here, everything I have done in a AWS console. So and I have copied that ARN role ARN already from the AWS console. So the next step is I'm going to create the storage integration. This is the most important point, and when we are talking about external stage. So I have mentioned, right, whenever we are talking about external stages, we need to create the storage integration. So the name itself, it is specifying, right? Storage integration, because my storage here it is in outside of the Snowflake, outside of the Snowflake account, right? So create, replace storage integration name and type it is a external stage. So this particular parameter will applicable for only external stages, and it specify, right? This is a kind of internal. By default it will take as internal, but this is a external stage. And storage provider S3, which provider is it? Kind of a AWS or Azure, we are going to specify here. If it is Azure Blob, we will put it here. If it is AWS, we are going to put the AWS S3. And storage AWS role ARN. So this is the whatever we have copied from the AWS console. We have created the role, right? In AWS console, we have a created role. So when we open that particular role, you have this particular ARN. I'm copying this ARN and I'm going to use that particular ARN as a role to the storage integration. So basically what I'm trying to do here, but that particular S3 bucket, I have created the necessary privileges and I have assigned that particular privileges to this particular role, and I'm going to give that particular role to this particular storage integration. So when I'm trying to copy the data from this particular external stage, by default, I'm going to provide the required credentials, required access to that particular S3 bucket, so that the copy command will go and it will read the data from that stage and it will load into the Snowflake. That is the main theme here. So now I have already created this particular storage integration. So whenever you create the storage integration, you can describe that particular storage integration. You will be able to see these are the values. These are the values you can able to see. Let it be. Okay. So now if you see here, if you describe that storage integration, enable true, and storage provide is S3, and storage allow location is my S3 ingestion demo. I have created that my S3 bucket, right? Ingestion demo. This is where my customer data. So whenever you are providing this particular role and particular location, so automatically by using this particular role, it will go to that particular location and it will pick up the file. So now I'm granting that access to from this particular S3 location. This is my file path and this is the role I'm using. So from when you describe this particular storage integration, you need two parameters from this particular properties. One is storage AWS IAM user ARN and storage AWS external ID. So I have already copied those. So what is this? See, from Snowflake and also we need to provide authority to the AWS role, right? See, here you are using AWS role. How this particular role will be authorized to access the Snowflake? I need to grant the privileges to this particular role, right? So that's where I'm giving the storage AWS IAM user ARN and storage AWS external ID. These two required, and I am going to use these two inside the AWS console. So it is pretty much straightforward. Nothing, there is no confusion or nothing big confusion here. From AWS side, I need access for the Snowflake. And the same way, from Snowflake side, I need access for the AWS. So in order to grant this, in order to exchange these privileges, I'm creating a two ARNs. One is from AWS side, another one is for Snowflake side. From AWS side, whatever I have created, I am going to use as part of the storage integration. And once I create the storage integration, whatever I'm getting that ARN, I'm going to use this particular ARN in the AWS console. So now, after creating this particular storage integration, I have described the storage integration. I have extracted the IAM user ARN and storage AWS external ID. So now I'm going to the AWS console and I'm going to the role. So now I'm going to S3 load. So now here, if you see, trust relationship option will be available here. If you click the trust relationship, so by default, the JSON something will come in a different way. What does it mean? So for example, let me see select other role. So now if you select this particular demo role, and if you see the trust relationship, see here it will ask ARN AWS IAM role and the action. So this is the by default will be there. So this I have modified like this. AWS and external ID. So where I can get this JSON? Same. We have a document, right? So if you go after creating the S3 integration, you will get the details, describe the storage integration, and you will copy those details and you go to that IAM along with the screenshots also they have provided very detailed steps. So you need to copy this, you need to put the AWS ARN and you need to put the external ID, whatever I have just now extracted from the storage integration. So now I have already placed those details here under this trust relationship and done. So now the configuration wise everything is set up ready. So now you can create your table. You can create this file format already there, and I'm going to create a stage. So create or replace stage and storage integration. Whatever I have created here, this is my storage integration. And URL, this is my file path. And my file format is CSV format. So now if you list out this particular stage, we'll be able to see the file. Even though this file is storing in outside of the Snowflake, you will be able to see the file. So now copy into that particular table, and from this is my external stage, and I'm running in first in validation mode to see the any error are there. Just check it once. If any errors are there, it will show there is no errors, so that's why it didn't provide any result. Then I can run on error continue. If there are, even though if any errors occur, it will automatically proceed and it will load the data. 9 rows loaded. So now if you select records are present. So this is how you can load the data. Anybody has any queries? So I have mentioned all the detailed steps here, and I will be giving that reference link also. Just follow it, and I would recommend, even though it is not a complete trial account, please try yourself by putting selecting options carefully. That will give a confidence to you. And during interviews and all, if somebody is asking about scenario-oriented questions and all, it will helpful you. So now, whatever the steps I have defined here, so one of the most interview questions asked during interviews. So they will ask like, okay, what are the steps you need to take care if you want to ingest the data from that AWS to S3 to Snowflake? These are the steps you need to take care. You don't need to mention about the trial account and all, but ideally you need to create particular policy at AWS end, and you need to create a role, and you need to assign that particular policy, which is grant the S3 bucket accesses. Then we need to create the storage integration at Snowflake end, and from this particular storage integration, we are going to grant that particular ARN to the AWS role, and once setup is ready, you can able to access it. That's all from my end. If anybody has any queries, I can take it up. And copy options. So two more options also is there. So if you want to, like, if any errors occurs, if you want to skip the file, you can skip, or if you want to abort the operation, you want to abort that operation. What is mean by skip file means it won't load anything. Abort the operation statement also, it will just cancel this copy command. So this we won't use it anywhere, but just for your information purpose, I'm saying. So that's all. So you can use this link and you can create the trial account. And if you want detailed level steps, I'll share that video reference link also. Then you can log into your AWS admin console, create that S3 bucket and upload your file into that particular S3 bucket. So once this is done, rest all steps are available in this particular document, Snowflake document itself. We need to create a policy, role, and we need to assign this particular policy, this particular role. And policy JSON hub, we are going to provide the my S3 bucket name. Then once the role is created, I'm taking that ARN and I'm going to use that ARN as part of my storage integration. Once that is done, our job is done. Nothing else. Okay. So this is how we can load the data from external stage to Snowflake. So the same steps applicable for the either Azure or GCP. So instead of S3, there we are going to create Azure blob. If it is a Google, we are going to create a Google bucket. The rest of steps are same. Same. The storage integration here, instead of S3, Azure blob will come. This particular AWS role, instead of AWS, Azure ARL role will come, or GCP will come. Okay. So this is how you can load the data from that external stage to Snowflake. Any kind of data, either it could be CSV or it could be Parquet or it could be JSON. Everything we are going to follow the same process. But while after loading the data, there are a couple of steps external needs to be taken care. So those we will see tomorrow, how we can load the Parquet data or JSON data into the Snowflake. Okay.